There's a lot of sensors, right? There are a lot of sensors here. So if you look at temperature, you already talked about thermocouples and thermistors.
Thermocouple we mentioned.
Thermist also you mentioned, no? You said something about resistance changing.
With respect, true.
I mean, are there other
The resistivity of the material.
resistivity of material changing? Yes. Are there other sensors that you can measure temperature with?
There are something, I heard something called bimetallic strip.
Bimetallic strip. What about infrared?
Yeah. So that will be a non-contact way of
Exactly.
measuring.
Non-contact. What about these two?
The thermistor and thermocouple, I think it has to touch the, if you are
Thermocouple, the junction.
Yeah. So the junction has to be exposed to the point at which that you are measuring. If it's my body temperature, I will have to touch.
Right. But what if it's a room? Then it's just exposed to the room.
Yeah, because you are measuring the room temperature.
So
it can be just exposed.
Right.
But the other non-contact modalities, like you have shown this picture now, where you just, show the sensor towards you, it gives the temperature.
Yes.
So it's a non-contact.
Yes. Non-contact. Yeah.
Right. COVID, you were mentioning. Yeah.
So if you look at all these different, again, we talked about this thing before, right? The measurements.
Correct.
Right? The sectors that the different measurements fall into. There are also many different ways. You see? If you look at optical photon resistors, infrared sensors, you see the sensors, pressure gauges, barometers for pressure.
So I think if I had to study all this 2-3
So
courses,
are we going to teach?
Probably not possible in one course.
So why don't we make it a 1 year or 2 year course? Another question I'll ask you is it important to know all these different kinds of sensors?
I think
what does it depend on? Why?
It's like if I get a sense out of this, then I can understand the other sensors.
You're playing with words now.
Yes.
But I think generally, I think if you are working, it depends which sector or area you're working in, what your expertise is.
Yeah.
Right? Depending on that, you might not need to know all the different ways.
And if I know certain sensors, and then I have the basic understanding to learn something new, and the world progress, people make new sensors,
exactly,
which cannot be taught now anyway.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
But I think it gives me the capability to understand how a sensor works.
Yes.
And I get confident, and then I can move on.
Yes. So I think in this course we'll probably teach most of the basic concepts or the basic principles, right?
Yeah.
To measure these different types of sensors, but you don't necessarily have to know all the different examples.
Yeah.
Right? Because that the principles should give you an idea, as you said, of how it should work.
Correct.
And also, there are some people, for example, people who work with vibration sensors, some of these people have worked 15-20 years just looking at vibration, and they're experts, very specialized, and they have experts. You talked about predictive maintenance. They can probably look at some graphs and they could predict themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
So again, it really depends on the sector you're working in, the expertise. But the main point is, I think it's important that they know the principles of the different types rather than all the examples. Right.
Oh, nice picture.
So here you have different types of sensors, just some pictures, right? You have your temperature sensors, accelerometers, ultrasonic sensors, gyroscopes, pressure sensors, optical sensors, capacity sensors, coil-based, piezoelectric. But, all these sensors are, you can see they're kind of, you can hold them.
Yeah. Looks cute also.
Right? You can play around with it. You can feel them. But here is this. What is this guy doing here? Sitting down. This looks like it's not, if you talk about size, it's not really comparable to all the other different sensors.
Yeah. But is it a sensor? I don't know. Because everything else is a sensor, it could be.
So that is also a sensor. So this is what we call a NMR or nuclear magnetic resonance sensor.
What it will do?
So nuclear magnetic resonance sensor basically looks at the spin of electrons and sort of thing. So basically works based on that. But the key point here is the operating principle, right? So depending on the operating principle, a sensor could be quite large.
Size-wise.
Or could be quite small. Now, most of the sensors I think that we come across, I don't know, on a daily basis or in the lab or if you're working in industry, are maybe sensors we can hold.
Yeah.
You know, when I looked at the pictures of the sensors, right? Now I know you work for a long time in with sensors. What do you notice? Do you notice anything? If you look at the different pictures, what do you notice? I mean, let's say you didn't know anything about sensors. Do you think you'll be able to tell the difference between the sensors? Like, I mean, when you look at the pictures, what do you see? Do they all look the same?
They look different. But just by looking at, if I don't know, just by looking at the pictures, I may not be able to say what it senses. But once I know, then, okay, it's like, I mean, carrot looks like carrot.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like that, these sensors has got some identity from the shape. That's what you meant.
Right. And why do you think somehow they are the design or the fabrication, for example, you know, why do you think they're different? Is it based on the principle of measurement?
Could be. Yeah. Because some of those requires space. I mean, the probe, for example, certain probes requires certain ways of arrangements. So then it becomes a lengthy one.
Right. Your design will change.
Some of them may be a disc type, so doesn't require that much longitudinal space. And so on. It's, it has to do with I think the principle that is employed to realize that sensor, the manufacturing that is used, depending on where you are using, then that may require specific packaging. So all that contribute to the shape.
Right.
But your point, I see, I mean, all of them, just by looking at, you are able to identify whether it is
right.
From the experience also.
Right, from the experience also. But also, you know, it can be similar, right? If you look at these two, they look pretty similar.
They look somewhat,
right? Somewhat similar, right? But yeah, so so depending on maybe the measurement principle, right? You might be able to kind of predict, okay, what kind of things it measures. Okay. What is this, Bobby? Now,
smartphone.
So he talked about, I remember you said very clearly, you said that,
what did I say?
You said that students come across sensors every single day.
I
remember you saying that.
Okay.
And then the first thing that came to my mind was this
cell phone.
And that is why I said, just wait, be patient. We'll come to that.
I was thinking about the temperature sensor.
It is. But
which is also almost true. I mean, all of us get fever at least once in a
That is true. That's true. Yes.
So, and you measure temperature.
Yeah.
But this is a better example.
Example.
Daily playing with this so many hours. So,
right. And there are so many different types of sensors here. I mean, how is it possible how can you fit all these different types of sensors in a phone? I mean, if you go back to this, it's not pretty big sensors.
Yeah.
Right. But how do you fit all these different types of sensors?
So these are kind of somehow people were able to miniaturize to use it in this space.
So you can miniaturize sensors too. So they don't necessarily have to come in kind of large packages.
At least certain sensors, right. Not the NMR for.
Right. Not the NMR, which is why we don't have an NMR here. So we do have a lot of sensors here, right? So somehow we can scale them down.
GPS, gyro, light sensor, proximity.
Yeah, touch sensor, microphones, humidity,
fingerprint. So many
different sensors. So that means
pressure also?
Pressure sensor also. Some phones, apparently have Like what is it, barometer? No, is it barometer?
I don't know how, I mean, it could be a pressure sensor, but
Yeah.
I don't know why they use it.
Look at that.
Maybe to detect the fault detection or something.
Uh-huh.
So accelerometer. So that's why this phone is smart.
Right.
These sensors make it intelligent.
Right. Huh? Right. Yeah. Again, good point. Right. If you don't have these sensors, then there's no intelligence there.
Yeah.
So intelligence then is it fair to say intelligence comes from sensors because information comes from the sensors, right? So sensors then. So now we are beginning really.
It's like you mentioned about let's say you have a super brain, but all sensors are down. Then what you do?
This is true.
This is very similar.
Yeah. So that's. So now we are beginning to see why sensors are important.
Excellent.